Let me take you to the older days or golden days of 2008 service-oriented architecture where we used to create a web service using SOAP. So I'm just showing you one of the WSDL file where this is a WSDL file example coming from IT help desk team where they can create a ticket, they can update the ticket, and they are giving you web service description language file, and then we will use that to create a ticket or to update the ticket or read the ticket. But how this is relevant in today's world where we are talking about AI space. So in this video, I want to demonstrate on how MCP or model context protocol can really help of those legacy code as well. That's the whole idea. So I'm going to meet both of this world, which is older world, which you are seeing now, and how we can create a ticket those days, and then how MCP can really help that. So in this video, you are going to create a custom MCP server. All the code, whatever I'm going to show in this video, it's committed to GitHub, so you can clone it and play around it with it. So let's start. The whole purpose is that how legacy system, before you even add AI to that, if you want to really see that if you add MCP on the existing your legacy SOAP service, like in this example, how it can really help and how you can naturally query the IT help desk system instead of sending the curl command or the typical SOAP web service command which we used to show. So let me start with the demo quickly. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to show those, I would not say ugly, but those older world, so which is over here. So this is a WSDL file which we got it over here. As you can see, it provides all these various options. This is the web service name. If you recall, based on this WSDL, you will create your SOAP request, which will create ticket, which will get ticket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run quickly some of the commands. Hope you have set up Claude Code. And what I'm going to do is I'll quickly open a new terminal, which is over here. And let me run one of the command, which will do a post, which will create a ticket. So this is how we used to do. So this is not post. I think I'm doing a get ticket command. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so I just run the command. I just I just did a post command. So in my case, I have already web service running. So this is my web service running on my port 8081. So on my folder structure, I don't want to confuse you, but what I tried to do is I just created older world. Older world is over here, the SOAP service. And this is a new world MCP, which is sitting on top of the SOAP service. So whenever you want to call SOAP service, it will go via MCP server. So MCP server will abstract all those complexities which we are doing now. We are creating a proper curl command, sending a request to our SOAP service, and we are giving proper XML payload. This is what our older world is. And then finally we get some ticket, right? We just invoke invoke the command. I want to invoke the operation call here if I see, right? Get ticket request, right? So I'm just calling get ticket request. I don't want to drill more on the SOAP world, but I invoke get ticket, which is over here, right? Get ticket request. That's the payload. So we just pass get ticket request. That's the payload, and this is to basically read any of the ticket, and it give a good nice payload as well that this is one of the ticket. And now, so this is one of the operation. I'll just run one quickly, another operation as well in SOAP. So if I go to over here and then let's see a create ticket. Let's do one more example. So again, I am into the curl and let me clear this so it looks good and let me make it bigger. So now we are going to create a ticket. Again, this is older world. As you can see, this is my payload. I am running this query. I am using a post endpoint. I'm sending the proper XML. You remember, right? Older days, this is how we need to create a proper XML and then it will create a ticket and then it shows, right, that it created a ticket. This is the response what we got from web service. Now, now let me take you to the newer world. Now for newer world, what we are going to do is we need to basically ask in a natural language. That's how the AI world is there, right? So what I'm going to do is create a ticket and assign to John. And this is about, for example, I would say Let me try to see. Yeah, keyboard is not working. For example, keyboard not working. I'll just put it. And then I'm typing by the way in Claude Code, and now it's going through MCP layer. You see, now it directly asks that do you want to invoke the MCP? So MCP server. So it's directly going to this MCP server, so which is I have already created. In my case, MCP server is already running. So now instead of going through directly SOAP endpoint, which we used to do, now I am proxying or I am putting one more adapter on top of it via MCP, and then it's going to directly invoke the MCP server. So end user doesn't have to worry about it. It directly invoke the MCP server. What is the MCP server name? Because MCP server name is MCP underscore legacy underscore soap. So I went into MCP server. If I go to src, if I go to index.ts, and here if I go to the specific line, so this folder is all about the custom MCP server which I just created. And here if you see, right, line number 22, it says legacy soap MCP. So this is what legacy soap MCP. And now it is calling create ticket, right? The moment I type create a ticket, because I have already added Cloud Code and I have already configured MCP server in my this project. So it automatically, by looking at the prompt, it directly invoked the MCP server. And from MCP server, it also tried to find the relevant tool. So my MCP server, which is legacy SOAP MCP server, which is basically proxying the older SOAP MCP server, the legacy MCP server. And that MCP server is calling the tool called create ticket. So this is the operation it's calling, right? So it's trying to confirm, do you really want to call this tool? I'll say yes, yeah, I want to create a tool. So it automatically passed the payload. It automatically created the payload. I do not have to type any curl command. I do not have to create that older XML, which I just show in the demo. So it created this. It generated ticket number. It says title, description, requester is John, and then it says ticket created. Now what I'm going to ask is fetch me latest ticket. So let's see. So now it's again going to call MCP server, the same legacy SOAP MCP server which I am running now, and it's going to call that MCP server another tool which would be maybe get ticket. So now, right, it now got it to get ticket, and then now it's going to, yeah, it show a nice summary that, yeah, this is the ticket which latest created, and this is the requester name, and this is the created timestamp. So in the backend, so this is what, before I go to backend, right, this is what I want to show you, that these are the older world where we used to create curl command, and then rather than curl command, what I'm trying to tell you, those XML based web services. But suddenly when you want to query a natural way, right, in today's world, if you want to meet both world, this one of the classic use case where you can create a MCP server layer on top of your legacy code, like here in this case SOAP web service, and you can query tickets naturally. Now I'll just go very brief in the code level. You can play with this code. I have committed this code to GitHub repo. But what this does, whenever I type all this command, what it does is it's first calling this MCP server. What I mean by here, so where is this is my MCP server, which is running over here. So MCP server is running as a child process. That's how the studio level MCP server works. It just spawn or created child process, and then MCP server is registered as a child process. We are not calling this MCP server as a HTTP protocol, right? That's what I'm trying to tell. And then each of this MCP server, whenever I type this message, it goes to MCP server. So my MCP server is connected on last line, if you see, right? So server is nothing but my MCP server. My MCP server is connected with this transport, which is a studio server transport. That's what I mean by studio MCP server. So my MCP server is running. So this prompt is going to MCP server. And from here MCP server, if you see, right? So this MCP server provides all those various ticket operations. So here if I look, right, so MCP server provides one of the operation called create ticket, then it provides operation get ticket. So all the SOAP service operations, they are registered as a tool to the MCP server. So this is how you can consider the SOAP various operations. You can relate with MCP server various tools. So SOAP operations, I would connect with the MCP server various tools. So this is how one server is created. Server is nothing but the server object which I created on line number 22. And then here with this MCP server, what are the tools that are available? So one tool is I'm calling the register tool method, and then it's registering the first tool which will create a ticket. And then whenever we register any tool, it will expect the bare minimum schema. So for anyone who wants to call this MCP server create ticket, they need to pass title, description, and this is the input schema. Rather, these are the data which anyone has to pass whenever they call the create ticket. So they need to pass title, description, ticket priority, requester, and then once MCP server gets the call to call this tool create ticket, it's going to call this function. So this async, you can see that, right? This lambda function is going to be called whenever this MCP server, this tool gets called. So this is how it's running. I'm trying to give you very basic high level idea. So this MCP server, now consider this is another tool. So if someone wants to get ticket, so to get the ticket, whenever the get ticket gets called, so they have to pass input schema. So whenever you want to call get ticket, you need to pass ticket ID. And what MCP server is going to do, it's going to call this function. So it's handler, what we call. So this is how you need to understand this. And this is how MCP server is running. Now let's understand we did two calls. Now one call which we did was fetch ticket. So if I look at this fetch ticket, so when I just ask, hey, why don't you fetch me the latest ticket? So it called MCP server get ticket function or MCP server get ticket tool. So it went to over here and get ticket expects ticket ID. We did not pass ticket ID, but we just ask why don't you fetch latest one? So this was optional in that case. And then MCP server run this code block. Now if you observed, it will look for ticket ID. And then finally, this is where it's getting the ticket data and wrapping into the ticket object. And ultimately MCP server is calling get ticket function. Now let's see get ticket, where the get ticket function is going there. I'm trying to go very bare minimum detail. So get ticket we are importing from soap client.js file. So MCP server is calling get ticket from soap client.js file. So let's see soap client dot. So I'm here, and here if you see again we are on MCP server folder. So all those calls going to the SOAP web service, everything is abstracted for the end user. And then here, if we go to get ticket function, which is get ticket over here on line number 92. And here, this is what it does. So it's basically calling this function, and then this is creating a body for the SOAP body. So everything is done by MCP server. So all those abstractions are being done by this code. It creates the XML payload. And then finally, after constructing the body, it is passing this body as an envelope to SOAP. And finally, it's calling the function called post in this file. And then it's passing the get ticket as operation. And it's passing this payload into the SOAP to this function. And finally, it passes response back. So now let's see what this post function does. So if you go to on top, the post function, which is written over here, so it is calling finally the SOAP web service over here, and then it's passing the same body, whatever we pass it over here, envelope XML, and then it's calling the SOAP web service, which is a web service. It's defined in action. So what we had passed in action, so we were on get ticket, and we were passing the SOAP action called get ticket. So, and then if I go back to the post function, it actually calls the SOAP web service. As you can see, it called post function SOAP URL. What is a SOAP URL? So this is a SOAP URL. So all this abstractions complexity, you got that whatever commands I type in a natural language, it will basically call the SOAP web service. So first, whatever I type, for example, if I type delete, I don't know if delete is provided or not, but I would say delete. latest ticket. If I do that, then maybe again it's going to talk to the MCP server, but it simply says that hey, there is no delete capability exposed by this MCP server. So this is another use case where if legacy service is not providing that web operations, maybe we would be getting the SOAP fault message. But here MCP, because whatever you talk on this Claude Code in a natural way, it's going to go to the MCP server, and MCP server simply says here there is no functionality for deleting tickets, so I cannot help you with that. And so this is what I just want to show you, that this is how you can create another design pattern where you can wrap your legacy code on top of it with MCP adapter pattern, so that whatever you talk, you can query your legacy system in a natural way without modifying your legacy system. So that's what I want to show you in a quick demo. Hope that helps. The code is there in GitHub. And then let me know any comments, if anything, which are not clear, or any other topic you want to talk. I can just create a video and explain you very simple way. That's what I want to talk to you. Thanks for watching, and shoot a comment if you really want any specific topic. I would highly recommend that. How did you create a new use case based on this one? And I think before I end, I didn't explain much, but this is what the SOAP service is. This is what the WSDL. I just created a dummy tickets. So you can just play around with this if you want to get idea. So this is not like full production grade system, but this is just an example quick, which I just want to give, that how you have legacy code, and if you want to expose via AI, before you add AI to the legacy code, this is one of the quick tests which you can do by creating MCP server as a wrapper or adapter on top of it. Thank you.